for many, many years, it was very, very hard because you were juggling doing the job you really understood, which was being a lawyer, with doing the job maybe you didn't understand quite so well, which is running a business. If someone's had a really good month, okay, at whatever level, if you thank them, people really appreciate it. We say in our strapline, we are a people business. And that means internally and externally, it's all about the people.
Hi everybody and welcome to FEBE Founder Stories, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Stephen Bernstein from Lawrence Stevens. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, John. You?
Now this is really cool for us because, listen, FEBE, the Growth 100, it would be nothing without the support of our partners. So first of all, let me say thank you for all the support that you're giving for us, because it's helping us to take FEBE to another level, as you've been seeing from meeting entrepreneurs today, the event that we recently did that you guys kindly co-hosted with us, you fronted it for us. They loved it. They loved getting together.
Yeah.
So it's a real honour to be able to celebrate your story as a founder of a business, knowing exactly what these people are going through. And I guess quite interestingly, had you have submitted your figures, you would have been in the Growth 100, which would have been a conflict of interest as a partner anyway, but we won't go there. So this is really interesting. Now, I can't help but call you Bernie, so I'm afraid I just have to call you.
Everyone calls you Bernie.
So.
And I love the fact that everyone calls me Bernie. I think it's something that I think is really important to me. I love the fact that when there's a secretary who starts at the firm, or when there's a trainee who starts, within 2 weeks they're calling me Bernie, and I just think that's amazing.
For me, it's very endearing. And Charlotte was emailing yesterday saying, "Can I call him Bernie?" I was like, "Well, of course you can." I didn't know if she could call you Bernie, but you're Bernie. So anyway, I digress. But let's get to the interesting elements of what I want to talk to you about today. This is of personal interest for me because my background is in professional services. So I'm an accountant by training, spent 9 years of my life in a big organisation, one of the big four. So I guess this is an industry I understand, professional services.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, an industry I really like. It interests me, it fascinates me. Now, so much is going on in the professional services industry, in the accountancy world, the legal world, and we'll get to that shortly. Yeah. But before we get to that, Bernie, you had the courage to set up your own firm with your co-founders. Yeah. Why? What made you want to set up your own firm? Tell us about the story of how you created your firm.
So I'd been a trainee at a firm, and I'd gone through the process of becoming. I'd qualified and I became a solicitor, and I'd progressed pretty quickly, fortunately, to become a partner.
How old were you when you became a partner?
It was probably only about 4 or 5 years.
Wow, that is quick then. So were you in your 20s when you became a partner?
Yeah, I think I was like 29 or something like that. But the firm that I was at had elements to it that I just didn't like. There were cultural issues that I wasn't happy with. Maybe we've all moved on as a society, but there was a culture of a lot of people shouting. It was the days when people used to be in their offices. As a firm, we've been open plan now for dozen plus years, and that's great. But in those days, there were offices, and you would get called into a partner's office, and you could hear the door close, and you could listen to the screaming that would come out from in the office. He'd be shouting at the trainee or the young solicitor. Phones were getting slammed. People were being sort of not abused. Abuse is not the right word, but the culture was one of fear in many cases, and people were so nervous that they were worried about messing up, rather than how are we going to grow this business and how are we going to attract new clients and how are we all going to collaborate. It was really, I was nervous. Everyone was nervous about making a mistake because that was the culture, even as a partner. Yeah, I think that's right, and there was a real hierarchy. And we'll talk about Lawrence Stevens in a minute, but I think one of the things that we tried to do when we set up Lawrence Stevens was to not smash the hierarchy, but make it so that I could be approached by anyone within the firm, and then would have a conversation with them. And I would hate to think that anyone within my organisation feels in any way inhibited and unable to talk to me. I was talking to someone just the other day. I mean, I say it's the old days, but maybe it's not the old days, because I was talking to someone the other day who said that they were a senior associate. They weren't a partner yet within their organisation. They got in the lift with one of the senior partners and they got out again because they were nervous about being in the lift with one of the senior partners, and they would rather not have to have that awkwardness of travelling up, how many floors it was, either in silence or trying to make small talk, and therefore they actually got out of the lift because they were too nervous. So that kind of culture is something that I thought to myself, I can do better than that.
That's something that, from my experience of walking straight into your office, you could... Well, actually, it was before the office. It was meeting you, Bernie. I could tell that was something that was important to you, that there is always that very flatness.
Yeah.
When I first met you, I'm meeting the CEO of an organisation, but you want to make people feel as comfortable and easy as possible. So it all starts from the fact that you were just uncomfortable with the way that people were being treated. Yeah,
I was uncomfortable with the way people were treated, and I thought, perhaps stupidly, that I could do better. At the time, and I used to go home and I used to complain to my wife, and at the time we had a young family. I think we had a 3-year-old, we had a 1-year-old. I didn't realise I was about to have a third on the way, and I was complaining to my wife about how I didn't like it, and she said to me, well, why don't you go on your own, form your own firm, or at least try and speak to some of your colleagues and see if you can establish something that is in your image rather than in someone else's image. So I approached a couple of my partners and asked them whether they'd be willing to come with me. Thankfully, they said yes. And then I remember very well.
But you were popular, Bernie.
Yeah, with them or with their wives? Or,
I'm talking about, with lots of their wives. Yeah, I didn't think about that or what have you. But I'm thinking about as well when all of a sudden you told your firm that day.
Well,
you weren't just leaving.
So that was in a sense quite an interesting story, because I remember we sat down and we put together a list of clients that we wanted to be able to try and take with us. And it was totally aspirational. And it was 2 pages long, and there was all these wonderful clients on that list. Whether or not they would come with us or not was another issue, but would we be allowed to take those clients with us? And I went into the senior partner at the time and I said, this is my list. And I expected him to just say no, 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 and go through it and cross all the names out and leave me with about 3 names. And he looked at it and he went, yeah, that seems fine. And I thought to myself, wow, I can't believe this. I've been allowed to potentially approach all of those clients. I found out subsequently that the assumption within the firm was that we would crash and burn within 6 months. I mean, we were going to be dead within 6 months. So therefore, in a sense, we were no threat to them. They were a much bigger organisation.
They were like, let you destroy it, let you do what, yeah.
Yeah. You go and you fail, and we won't have to worry about it, really. And maybe you might come back begging for your job back in 6 months' time. So they were like, yes, of course you can, you can take those clients with us, and probably laughing behind our back and thinking to themselves, there's no way those guys are going to be able to make a go of it. And that was 1996, and we opened our doors in 1997. And one of the things, and we sat there, the 3 of us, we managed to persuade one secretary to come with us. So we, rented a room in the West End, actually, in a place called Market Place, which is just off Great Portland Street. And we sat there and we waited for the phone to ring. And what was astonishing, actually, was we were bowled over by how many of the clients that we'd worked with wanted us to succeed and supported us. Gave us their business. They didn't have to, and in a sense, it was riskier for them to move their respective, matters away from a well-established law firm to a brand new law firm that could theoretically have been out of business in no time at all. But it was actually amazing how many were willing to almost back a new business, and we were blown away by it. And so many of those people that were on what we regarded as an incredibly aspirational list, that they followed us, and that was thankfully enabled us to not hit the ground running. I mean, it took a while, but at least enabled us to survive. And suddenly the cases started coming in, and the work started coming in, and we were able to grow. And that really is all because of our clients. And I still have a lot of those clients who I act for even now. And they remind me, they say I was your. Well,
from
about 20 of them all say I was your first client. There was a lot of people who were my first client, but there's a lot of them who we still act for after all these years, and they remind me of the way in which they supported us.
You know, Bernie, when we talk about the kind of starts of any business, the thing that always strikes me is the courage that people have to start a business. You know, if we think about some of the interviews today, it's been some quite young people that have started, you know, in their early 20s with, I guess, nothing to lose. It's very different when you've got a lot to lose, which I guess in your case was very much the case. You know, you were established, you were a partner, I guess, with what comes with that, the mortgage, the stability, a young family.
Three young children.
Three young children.
Three under four.
I mean, that is a huge amount of courage. Was there just something inside you that was just... Were you fearless, Bernie, or was it you just backed yourself? What is it that caused you to have the courage to do that? Or, as you were saying earlier, it was just you were so blunted by what you'd seen and you thought, this is the only way.
Yeah, I think there is an argument to say, and you probably find this with a lot of entrepreneurs, maybe who go out and set up their own business, that sometimes you just feel like things have to change. You almost have no choice, but things have to change. And I do sometimes think back about what would have happened if I'd had never moved. You know, I could theoretically have just carried on within that organisation. I could have worked my way up within that organisation. It would have taken a number of years, but, you know, one day I'd have potentially become not an owner, but an owner within that organisation. But maybe it's conceit, maybe it's the fact that I felt like I could do better. Maybe it's the fact that, and I think I probably didn't realise I was quite entrepreneurial at the time, but in the 25 years or whatever since then, I do realise that the choices that I've taken and the way in which and we've all sort of grown this business means that I do tend to take the entrepreneurial option. So maybe I didn't realise it at the time, but actually with hindsight, I am somebody who is quite optimistic and quite a bit of a risk taker, and quite entrepreneurial. And I think that's, you know, for me as a corporate lawyer, that is good because that enables me to empathise with a lot of my clients who are also entrepreneurs, growing their businesses, owning their businesses, and it kind of puts me in a position to be able to say, yeah, you know, I understand what you're going through, and I think that's quite a useful skill.
Well, that is one of the things that I would, as a personal observation, think that is extremely strong in your organisation, that is many people say, you know, we understand what it's like to be in your shoes. You really do understand what it's like to be in your shoes. As you were saying, you know, you took on the overhead of which I guess would have been a fairly quite a high rent on a West End office.
Frightening.
You know, and all of a sudden, right, here we go, guys, it's on us. So that is pressure. And so I guess, there is...
We dealt with it in a strange way, though, because funnily enough, I remember we stayed in that office for a short period of time. We moved to another office. And I think whilst we're good lawyers, we didn't take ourselves too seriously. So one of the sort of the apocryphal stories about Lawrence Stevens, one of the sort of real interesting stories was there was a period of time in which the three owners became four owners, and we all sat in a room together. And there were four desks in this room, and there was also a PlayStation in that room, and there was a dartboard in that room. And I have to say, I look back, I spent a frightening amount of time speaking to clients whilst on the PlayStation, and I feel like I was still able to give them proper advice, but at the same time, we didn't take ourselves too seriously,
no.
and maybe that's important. I think a lot of lawyers maybe are guilty of taking themselves too seriously.
I think many lawyers take themselves too seriously, Bernie, if I'm honest with you, and I think it's a very refreshing approach to break that down, because at the end of the day, people buy people, and you're only going to buy from someone that you're sitting opposite, thinking, okay, this is the real deal.
Yeah.
Surely, why put up that front?
Correct. I think that's right. I think it really is important, and I try and encourage everyone within my firm, and a lot of them, I mean, maybe in a sense, those people have those skills because we want them to have those skills. What I say is, we don't recruit people who don't fit in. I don't want to be part of an organisation. I don't want anyone to be within my organisation who I feel isn't right for Lawrence Stevens. And that means you need to fit in. You need to be not a mirror image of what I am or my other colleagues who are owning the business are, but at least you need to fit into the organisation. So therefore, you're not going to be somebody who shouts at young people, and you're not going to be somebody who takes themselves too seriously, and you're not going to be somebody who isn't just a nice person. I know it sounds really maybe a bit basic, but fundamentally, I want to have a firm that is filled with people whose company I enjoy.
Well, it was Andy Jeffries from Dock and Bay who was saying, a lot is written, a lot is spoken about culture. There's a lot of strategic books written about culture, but actually his definition of it starts with the tone at the top. It starts with the people at the top of the organisation. If they're good, nice people wanting to do good stuff, then surprise, surprise, the culture becomes good.
Yeah, I mean, when I say to people, I don't want anyone. I don't know whether I can achieve this or not. How can I influence it? I don't want anyone to have that Sunday night feeling of going to bed on a Sunday night and thinking to yourself, "Oh God, I've got to spend a week within that organisation." What a horrible thought. Clients can be difficult. You might think, "Oh God, I've got a terrible piece of work to do tomorrow," or "My client's driving me mad." That's different. What they need to have is a support structure within the organisation. Yeah. So I don't want anyone to come in to Lawrence Stevens and feel, "Oh, I really don't want to see Stephen today," or "I really don't want to see some of the other partners today because they're going to give me a hard time."
So if you, not wishing to cut out a big part of the story because we want to cover that, but if I was to say to you, then today you're going to have over 100 people,
nearly 130 now.
130.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's jumped significantly since when we first started talking.
It does.
Earlier last year, blimey. Would you believe me?
No, I wouldn't. I think it's a terrible thing to say, but because I hear a lot from when I talk to some of the FEBE entrepreneurs, it sounds with a lot of people that COVID was a bit of a catalyst for some people's businesses. It's amazing how many people, terrible thing though it was, it did have an effect on some people, either caused their businesses to fail, or alternatively, in some weird way, change the way we work and change the way people shop and change the way people live in such a way as to change the way people operate their businesses. So for us, we were a normal business that was growing at a steady rate, but we were constrained by the desks that we had within our office. If you had 50 desks, you had 50 people. If you wanted to employ 51 people, you couldn't because you only had 50 desks. And when COVID hit, we had about, say, 55 people working within the organisation. And then when we went, when everyone started working from home and everyone was suddenly aware of the possibility of working from home and started trusting people, because that was the other issue you had. A lot of people, as soon as everyone starts working from home, everyone's going to spend their whole time watching This Morning, and then they've been watching Cash on the Attic, and no one's actually going to do any work.
Or borrowing your PlayStation.
or playing PlayStation. But once you were able to see that the numbers didn't change, actually, anyway, in some circumstances, they got better because people were working just as hard, but working from home. And actually, in a weird sort of way, they could spend that hour that they would normally travel to the office working in the morning, and sometimes that hour at the end of the day working, and actually people became more productive. And once you were able to trust people and realise that working from home wasn't a bad thing, and actually working from home is the new normal, then you were no longer constrained by desk space. So we were able at that point to grow the business and suddenly seek out opportunities and explore how we were going to add to the service that we had without thinking to ourselves, well, we can't do that because we haven't got enough desks.
So as a result then, moving forward, is that just going to help fuel the growth even more and more then because there's just no constraint now?
Correct. So we had a situation recently, we've changed because we've taken another floor within our building, but we had a situation recently where we had 110 people working off 45 desks. And on the face of it, you think, well, how does that work? So it worked that there was a desk booking system that people had on their phones, and you had to book a desk. And that also was good because what it meant is that people moved around the office.
Yeah.
So you no longer had everyone. I had a situation recently, just to digress, where I was offered a potential new lawyer, quite a senior partner within another firm, but I was told that this particular individual would only come if she had her own office.
Ah, right. So how did you deal with that?
I said, doesn't work.
We
don't have offices. We don't have offices. We're open plan. We're paperless. You walk. You book your desk. You travel around the office. You've got no fixed desk. And if that doesn't work for you, then clearly
we're not for you.
We're not for you, and that's fine. The person is not for us because we're not going to have your own office. So,
and so many people compromise on aspects of their culture, don't they?
Yeah.
And therefore they weaken it.
Yeah.
You're saying no, even though this person would be probably fantastic for your business. They may drive the top line, the fee by another level, but for you, if it contaminates the culture, or it has a risk that it could contaminate the culture, not happening.
Well, it's not within the culture. The culture is open plan, and everyone moving around the office, and having not necessarily having a fixed desk, and that relatively flat hierarchy that you're talking about. It's really important for me, as one of the owners of the business. One day I can be sitting next to a trainee, the next day I can be sitting next to a secretary, the next day I can be sitting next to a partner, and that's good for me as well because it means that I get to listen to them, I get to talk to them. How is everything with you? Is everything going well? It's really important, I think, for the owners to really live the brand within the organisation and demystify your role because they can also hear you and they can also get an understanding of what you do.
Yeah.
And I think that makes you more accessible.
Yeah. In terms of going from say you're a partner in your organisation. Look, correct me if I'm wrong, but in some practices, many practices, you can still become a leader in a firm without actually being a good leader. You're in a senior position because you're great with your clients, and as a result of that, your portfolio is such a size, which therefore means you have a seat at the top table.
Yeah.
Being a partner in your existing firm, had you had much exposure to leadership? So the question I'm trying to ask is, how did you find it then all of a sudden being a co-founder and a CEO and then becoming a leader, a leader of a business?
I think it's very, very difficult because what you do as a prospective solicitor is you've been to university, you've been to law school, you've become a trainee, you know your law, you know the particular discipline that you are qualifying into. But you're not a business person.
Yeah.
And no one's trained you to be a business person. The training of being a lawyer doesn't involve training you as a business person, how to run a business. I don't know whether there's an expectation that in many cases you're not going to be running a business. You're just going to be within an organisation, and in a sense you don't need to know when the VAT is paid, and you don't need to know when the rent is due. And you don't need to know about PAYE.
Or even the importance of getting your clients to pay.
Yeah, collecting your
cash
debts.
flow.
Correct. For a lot of solicitors, their job is to come in and do the work, record the time, do the bills, and often I remember I was told very early on in my career, a good client is a client who pays, and getting the money in is obviously key, and making people understand that element of it, doing the work, doing the bill, getting the bill paid, is of course how everyone gets paid within the organisation. So therefore, helping people to understand that. But for a lot of solicitors, they don't necessarily, why should they, have that knowledge and understanding of how to run a business. And so I would say the hardest times with Lauren Stevens was that period of time when we became big enough that really you were a proper business at that point.
Yes.
You weren't just an amalgam of lawyers. You were a proper business, and that came with growing pains and issues around rent and VAT and PAYE and NI and pensions and this, that and the other. But you were still not, well, at that point you weren't big enough to be able to have a management team in place. And so therefore, and our management team who aren't lawyers,
yes.
The business services side. So for many, many years, it was very, very hard because you were juggling doing the job you really understood, which was being a lawyer, with doing the job maybe you didn't understand quite so well, which is running a business.
Is that something that is that just something that you therefore just naturally learnt how to do, Bernie? Or was it studying, reading books, talking to people that I don't know, I think
we made loads of mistakes. I'm sure we made loads and loads of mistakes, and I think it is a bit trial and error. I mean, maybe you're right, probably could have done with reading some books, but it's a little bit trial and error. And you make decisions, and you look back at some of those decisions, and they've worked out brilliantly. Was it by design, or was it just more by luck than judgment? I think in many cases, maybe you have a gut feel as to how to make decisions that work out. Maybe that's the distinction between the businesses that have gone through that growing pain and have failed, and the ones that have gone through that growing pain and have succeeded, because there are both sides of that particular coin. And maybe there's a bit of luck, maybe there's a bit of innate business common sense, but it is hard because now, we're now as an organisation 130 people, and last year we recruited our first COO, and it was, oh my God,
wow.
It was a game changer for us.
Really?
All these decisions that we used to talk about that in many cases never got done, suddenly got done. Okay? Suddenly you had somebody there who really understood how to run a law firm, whose job was running a law firm, and wasn't trying to balance running a law firm with keeping clients happy, doing the work, etc., etc.
So that's a big moment for you then?
It was a huge moment for us. And he's then built around him a full team, HR and learning and development and other and IT and all those other areas that you need when you're a bigger business, when for many, many years those were being done either by us or outsourced in certain cases, or you had someone there. But the problem is you had someone there who do they report to? You might have someone who's in charge of IT, but if we didn't understand IT, who was actually overseeing them and making sure they did a good job? So bringing that person in, that CRO, for us was a game changer.
Yeah. So let's just look at the importance of entrepreneurialism within your organisation. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but there can't be that many law firms of your size where the founders are still involved in the business.
That's probably true, actually.
I'm sure it's true.
That probably is true.
Okay, I'm sure there are some.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is there are not many. So the advantages for that, therefore, being that the entrepreneurial spirit, the flair, is therefore very much still in the hands of the people driving the business, which is you and your co-founders and your fellow partners that you brought in. How have you made sure, Bernie, that founder spirit is still strong within your organisation? Because obviously that's going to be a competitive advantage for you.
Yeah, I think it's leading in a way that creates a situation whereby people don't feel, as I mentioned a bit earlier, that you're not approachable.
Yes.
Leading in a way that makes sure that everyone comes along with you. I remember we talk about sort of reading books and reading books about management. And I remember once going to a lecture where they described a boat. You probably heard this one before. And there were three people in the boat. There were three types of people within the boat. There's the people at the front of the boat with the oars who are rowing away and causing the boat to move forward very, very quickly. There was the group of people who are sitting on the boat. Okay, they're not the ones doing the rowing, but they're sitting there and they're going along with the journey. Okay, and both of those groups of people are absolutely fine. The rowers and the people who are the passengers, they're fine. There's also the people at the back of the boat who are rowing in the opposite direction. Okay, and slowing you down as an organisation. Okay, and actually hampering you as an organisation. And I think the challenge is making sure that you don't have the ones that are sitting at the back of the boat rowing in the opposite direction. Yeah. It's fine. You can't have everyone rowing at the front. It's not practical. Not everyone's got that skill set, that mindset. But what you want is everyone at least on the journey with you. No one actually specifically hampering the journey and actually rowing in the opposite direction. So I think what we have to do is try and make sure that people enjoy what they do as well. I mean, one of the things that we did as an organisation a couple of years ago, it was actually a trainee. She came up with an idea. She approached one of the partners and said, look, I've got an idea with the people working from home and people maybe not spending as much time in the office. It was her idea that we should do something to try and help the culture within the organisation. So what we did is and her idea was to actually have houses like you used to have at school. There were 4 houses within the organisation. And then everyone who joins the firm, everyone was put in their house. So there were 4 equal-sized houses, and everyone now who comes into the firm, they are put in a house. And throughout the year, there are competitions where the houses compete against each other. So 2 weeks ago, we had sports day. Like an old-fashioned sports day at school, where we rented a pitch in Regent's Park and everyone turned up and there was egg and spoon race and running races and rounders and tug of war and this, that and the other, and there was a winning house and a losing house and this, that and the other. Those sort of things, and those sort of things are really important to bring everyone together and make everyone to be rowing at least in the same direction, or if not sitting in the boat in the same direction and not rowing backwards. And those sort of activities I think are really important.
You know, if you think back to when you were saying in the office, you know, of old, a partner getting properly angry with a member of the team. Yeah. That does nothing good of any type for any culture, does it? No. It quashes innovation. It makes people scared to try new things. Yeah. I guess for you that must be something that you want that entrepreneurial spirit to be, that people can try new stuff.
Correct.
And it's okay if they fail.
Yeah, you've got to...
Not everyone's always going to do great stuff every single time, but you've got to try, right?
I think you've got to be brave enough as well as a leader within any organisation to be able to identify talent within your organisation and not be frightened by it, not be threatened by it. I think what you have to do is look at those young people, and you know, it's this old football adage: if you're good enough, you're old enough. And I think that can apply to all businesses. So you know, you've got some young lawyers within your organisation who are talented and stars. Don't keep them in the back. Allow them to be at the front. Yeah. And we have some really key client relationships that are controlled by young lawyers, which within a number of other firms you would say that just wouldn't happen. It's got to be the partner, and there's no way that a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year qualified individual can actually own a client relationship, but that person is good enough, and therefore allow that individual to control that relationship and own that relationship and support them when they need it and be there, and you know, don't abandon them, but at the same time empower them. And so that I think is really, really key, that you don't be threatened by those people, you actually encourage those people and you allow them to thrive. Because at the end of the day, those are the partners of the future, those are the owners of the future, whether within my firm or within other firms. And you have to empower those people, and that means you have to support them. And it's surprising, you know, under no circumstances am I criticising how other firms do it, but sometimes within very large organisations, it's quite hard to get client interaction, because when you're acting for huge organisations and FTSE 100 companies, are you going to allow the 3-year, 4-year qualified solicitor to have a direct relationship? Probably not, because the reality is that, you know, they're such a key client, has to be managed at partner level, and then maybe you might have a senior partner and a junior partner and a senior associate and an associate and all those levels, and the solicitor or the associate, you know, they might come to a meeting, they might be sitting on a Teams call, but they're not going to open their mouth. Okay, whereas
you throw them into it.
And how does that person ever really learn? How does that person ever become the person who can speak directly to the client? There must come a stage of their career where they're allowed to do that. Well, I think we are allowing that to happen maybe much earlier than other organisations.
Wow.
Because people are good enough.
If you think about the experience that therefore gives to people, it means if they're thrown into it earlier on, think how good they are, you know, as they become old. They're brilliant, right? Correct. Independence is an important word for many organisations. Independence to me, because it links to that entrepreneurial freedom, that spirit, that flair, because it enables you to do things without constraint. Now, if you look at the accountancy industry, mass consolidation or private equity buying, you know, big stakes of the organisations now to then help them very quickly consolidate and grow bigger and bigger. Starting to happen in the legal industry now. Is that something that you'd be wary of, because it would be against the whole ethos mantra of Lawrence Stevens?
Yeah, I think we'd have to be very, very careful. One of the things, you know, we've, in our time as we've grown as a business, we've had approaches from other law firms. Do you want to merge with us? Firms that have been bigger than us, firms that have been similar size to us. And I think one of the problems with that, and I know I've used the culture word a lot, but one of the problems with that is, how do you integrate two businesses that have different cultures? How do you integrate two businesses and properly integrate them so that they feel part of one organisation and not just, you know, two firms under one banner?
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the things that becomes very, very difficult. And private equity as well. I think it can work. Clearly, it has worked within accountancy firms in some cases, and I'm sure it probably can work within the legal framework. But it has to be something that doesn't make the firm into nothing more than a business that is just trying to hit the numbers and give a certain IRR to the PE house. So I think maybe there is a way of threading that needle. I'm not saying it's straightforward, and I think it probably is the future, because the reality is that growth is expensive.
Yeah.
So how do you continue to grow just organically without assistance? And sometimes, how do you fund growth? To a large extent, you have to fund it out of cash flow, but that's expensive and not necessarily easy.
Yeah.
So how do you achieve growth whilst maintaining a culture, without losing your identity?
Yeah.
But equally without going bust.
Yeah.
So how do you achieve that? It's easier probably to not grow. It's easier to just stand still. But as an organisation, that's not a path that we've chosen.
Ambitious organisations never want to stand still, do they?
Yeah.
As you walk around you said 130 people, you've just taken the second floor. As you walk around, does it give you a huge amount of pride that, the family's growing at such a rate it is, and you see that there's no offices, and I'm sure therefore you see that there is this flat structure where you're saying people as early as possible talk to their clients, no matter how senior they are.
Yeah.
It must give you an enormous sense of pride.
I talk about, I think you probably would say the same about FEBE. I talk about Lauren Stevens as my baby.
Yeah.
My 3 other daughters get a bit annoyed about that, because they thought there were just the 3 of them, but there's actually 4 of them. Because Lauren Stevens is my baby. And so when I stand up in front of the staff, in certain circumstances, it sounds a bit trite, but it is a family. Everyone's very close, weddings are celebrated, births are celebrated, engagements are celebrated. Everyone's very busy with everyone else's lives, not in an intrusive way, but in a kind way. One of the secretaries last week was doing a jump out of a plane for Royal Marsden. Everyone's very excited about it. We have a charity that we support every year. This year it's Crohn's and colitis, which is really important, because actually that came as a result of one member of staff suffering badly from Crohn's, and therefore we thought it was a really good idea to support that as a charity. So I'm enormously proud about what the firm has become, and as I said before, to walk around and see people working. But I don't walk around in a kind of patrician way. I think it's really important not to walk around and say, you
don't ask people to get notebooks out, do you?
Yeah. I just make them stand as I walk around, that's all. It's fine. They don't have to salute. If they choose to do so, that's up to them. I walk around. I do walk the office, and I go up to people and I ask them how's it going, and I thank people, and it's a silly thing to say, but it is amazing how powerful that is.
Yeah.
If someone's had a really good month, okay, at whatever level, if you thank them, people really appreciate it.
Appreciation is massive, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's right, because I think there is this incredible wage inflation within many industries, and the legal sector is no different. And you've got people getting paid bonkers amounts of money, and it's hard to compete in that kind of environment. So what do? You either just try and compete on a salary front the whole time. Well, I'm not sure how your business survives that, because not every business can do that. Or you try and find something else.
Yeah.
Okay. And that something else is, yes, you're well rewarded and you're paid, and we make sure that we appreciate people from a salary perspective, but also we appreciate them from an emotional perspective.
Yeah.
And that means, we don't require you to work all weekends, and we don't require you to work all night, and we don't want you to work all night. We actually, during the pandemic, we sent round when people were working ridiculously hard and emails were coming out at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, we actually sent round a sort of missive. We'd said, we do not want to see anyone working past 8 o'clock. Okay, fine, if you've got a big deal that you have completing that night, fine. But as a matter of course, we want you to stop working. People would say, how kind, 8 o'clock, you know what I mean? Maybe it should be, at midnight, we're happy for you to stop working. But I mean, no, we were saying we don't want you to be working all hours, okay? That's not what we want for our people.
Yeah.
We want them to have weekends. We want them to have a life outside of work.
Yeah. Let me just move to the dynamic of your partners, because, we've spoken a lot about your team.
Yeah.
But initially, I guess for a number of years, it would be yourself and your co-founders that were very much the ultimate decision makers.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, you're then building up the partner base. You've got equity partners.
Yeah.
How many partners are there in the firm?
So in total, there are 32.
32 partners. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of which there are 7 equity partners.
Yeah. And so how have you managed? How have you found the process of letting go the reins, relinquishing control a little bit, and because you have to respect the fact that now you've got, people that have every right to have an opinion and wanting to drive the business as much as you do. How do you find that?
Do you know? I think for a while it took a while for us to get our head around it, but actually, after a while, it's actually quite a relief.
Is it?
In a sense, because trying to be all things to all men is a challenge, and when the organisation is getting bigger and bigger, and the decisions are bigger and bigger. There actually comes a stage where you look at all those people who are talented, capable, the owners, the bosses of the future. And again, it's a bit like my argument about if you're good enough, you're old enough. Why shouldn't those people have the responsibility? So, traditionally, we take between 4 and 6 trainees every year. Traditionally, it was always the senior partners.
How many?
Between 4 and 6.
Okay. I thought you said 46.
No. Then we'd really grow quickly. But between 4 and 6 trainees every year. And in the last couple of years, we've changed it, whereby actually it isn't just the senior partners who are doing the interview process. It's actually the people who are not the owners of the business.
Right.
In some cases, it's some of the sort of younger lawyers are involved in that process. Because actually, don't hold everything in. Don't control everything. Relinquish it. And actually, it's a relief when you do so, because that just means that because there are more things to do, why would you not allow very skillful, very talented people to use those skills? So
again, pride in the fact that you're building up a nucleus, a group of people that are equally passionate about decisions.
There's no point holding it all like that, because the reality is there obviously has to come a time where you're going to have to let go.
Yeah.
And if you're expecting somebody who's never had responsibility before to suddenly have all the responsibility or significant responsibility, you can't go from 0 to 100. You have to have travelled that journey. And ultimately, the time you need to go to 100, ideally you want to be on 90 at that point.
Yeah. And just finally talking about the perception, the online perception, I find websites very interesting because I think they say a lot about an organisation. They're very, very important.
Yeah.
I think the professional services industry can usually be quite guilty of corporate guff, i.e. writing stuff, lots of cliches, things that don't really mean very much.
Yeah.
Looking on your website, it's very real language. Explain to me why that was important to you, that that you went through that process of just stripping out all the cliches and, as I said, all the guffy nonsense that so many people write.
I think approachability is really important. I think demystifying yourself as an organisation is really, really important. We have clients who are real, normal, nice people. Why shouldn't we show of ourselves that we are just the same as them?
Yes.
That we are also real, normal, nice people who are approachable, and therefore just producing your website, which the old days it used to be brochures, and no one has brochures anymore. That's how people, their first impression of you is often the website.
Yeah.
You'd want to give the impression through that medium that you are who you really are, which is nice, normal, approachable people.
Yeah.
So why confuse everybody with complicated legal language? We say in our strapline, we are a people business.
Yeah.
And that means internally and externally, it's all about the people. And therefore, why put up barriers and make it so that you're unapproachable? Quite the opposite. you want to make yourself as approachable as possible
Yeah.
so that clients feel comfortable with talking to you.
Yeah. So your wife Joanna was really supportive, wasn't she, of this? Really wanted you to do this all those years ago, despite having such a young family.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right, really. And maybe you need somebody, any entrepreneur who's looking to go on their own or set up their own business needs that push sometimes, or if nothing else, needs to know that there's someone backing them, someone supporting them, whether it's a family member or a friend or a colleague, that somebody is there. Because I've heard you say in other to other entrepreneurs, it's lonely at the top, and I'm not, you know, I've got other founders with me, so I'm not at the top, but at the same time, it is quite lonely at the top, because sometimes you need to look around and think to yourself, am I making the right decisions here?
Yeah.
You know, am I doing the right thing? I just hope that the way I'm driving this business forward is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and having somebody who, in my case, I'm fortunate enough to have my wife who says, yeah, you know, I believe in you, and I think what you're doing is good. She doesn't always say that, to be honest, just for the avoidance of any doubt. When I think I may have mentioned to you, when things go well, this was definitely her idea. When things go badly, why on earth did you leave your last firm? But the fact of the matter is that having somebody to support you and back you and tell you that it's going to be okay is essential.
Yeah. Okay, so the final question is, you started this in 1997.
Yeah.
Still a young man, Bernie.
Yeah, no.
What what hopes and aspirations do you have for the future of your firm moving forward? Is it something that excites you just as much as it did those years ago?
It does. It does. And I think we've grown significantly. I mean, you know, I think in the last 2 years we've sort of doubled the turnover, and we're, you know, probably more than doubled in terms of headcount as well. It's not growth for growth's sake. It's not like, you know, just desperately grow. But I've been trying to build a full service law firm. And I've said to people, I've always seen, when I think of Lawrence Stevens, I almost think of a jigsaw puzzle. And for many, many years, there were just loads of pieces missing. You know, it's like one of those jigsaw puzzles that you did at Christmas and there was 1,000 pieces and you thought, oh my God, I'm never going to finish this. And you did the first 250 and you thought, I'm never going to be able to finish it. But it was and is a jigsaw puzzle. And you just see yourself filling in pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. So you're launching new skills, launching new departments. You're taking existing departments and you're strengthening them. You're growing. You're filling in the gaps. You know, so we're fortunate that in the next couple of weeks we're launching a sports law department. That's been an aspiration that we've had for many years.
We or you, or both? Sports. I'm just saying sports because I know you're a mad sports fan.
I'm a mad sports fan. Yeah, I'm very, very excited about it. I am living the dream in relation to that.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But I mean, it's filling in the pieces of a jigsaw so that you become a full-service law firm. I've often said to people, you know, that even when we were 22, 23 years old, I didn't feel like I felt like we were still in our sort of teens. I thought we were still an adolescent, okay? Just in terms of where we were as an organisation, okay? And the last couple of years, the addition of the COO, the addition of the business services, the growth of our PR position, you know, that we're, you know, becoming better known within the legal industry. I feel like we're at university now. Even though we may be sort of 26 years old, I feel like we're maybe at university, maybe coming to the end of university. We're becoming a mature organisation that is a full service law firm, and that's the plan, to continue to mature that organisation, continue to strengthen areas. Look at different areas that we don't do and see whether there's opportunities there, and grow, not just for the sake of growth, but to make something that is really significant, sustainable, long-term.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Bernie, thank you so much for allowing us to found a story on you. And from a personal level, again, reiterating what I said at the beginning, we're having the time of our lives on FEBE, doing things already this year that we couldn't have dreamt of doing last year, like, for example, the Nobu Party. But thank you so much for supporting us, along with PTE and PwC. But it really is an honour to have you on board, and especially with that founder mentality, which is so unmatched to the people that obviously are in the Growth 100. So it's great to hear your story. Can't wait to see what happens in the many years ahead with the firm. But thanks again for supporting us and for sharing your great story.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Bernie.